So this is a tutorial for Hedwig's theme, also known as Harry Potter's theme, by John Williams. This is based on an arrangement available on musicnotes.com. I will actually put a link to that in the description of this video, but really the arrangement is my own. It is in the original key, so when you go and watch the movie, it'll match right up with the original key of the song. All right, so obviously there's more to it than that, but we're going to focus on the first part of this theme. And I'm actually going to cut this into two pieces as well. Okay, so the first part we're going to learn is just this. All right, and then we'll tackle the rest of that in the second video. What we need to get familiar with, first of all, is the hand positions and just some of the sequences or patterns that you're going to be playing in the song. So first of all, if you take your right hand and you just put it here, I've got my 5 fingers lined up with 5 white keys, starting with the key E. And you'll notice this is middle C here. I've actually not on the E right next to middle C, but I'm up an octave higher. You could really play it on any of the E's. Like, you could play it here if you would like. But to make it sound a little bit more like the actual song and the beginning of the song, it's a little bit higher. So we're going to start up here. Get your 5 fingers across those 5 notes, E, F, G, A, B. That's our position. And in this position, you're going to have actually 2 black keys, but we're just going to focus on the first one, which is your second finger. Your 2 finger here is going to be resting on this F sharp. So 5 fingers over 5 notes, but my 2 finger here is resting on the F sharp. All right. So if you can just get your hand in that position and just get it kind of relaxed, where you can hold down all those keys without any tension in your hand. The whole idea of playing the piano well comes down to being able to play the keys with no tension in your fingers or your wrists. Now that's technique. I'm just going to be focusing mostly in this video on how to play the right notes in the right order to make the sound that you want. But the technique is if it hurts, if it's difficult for you to play, that has a little bit to do with your fingers not being really developed, or you haven't practiced this position before. It takes a little bit of effort to get used to it. So just get used to those notes to start with. If you can kind of look at those first 3 notes and notice that the shape of those 3 notes is a triangle, all right? The beginning of the melody is going to be working with that triangle. All right, so you might just do that. 1, 3, 2, 1. Just get used to stepping down that triangle pattern on the keys, starting with the E, up to the top, to the point, and back down. All right. That triangle is going to occur more than once during this song, so it would be good for your fingers just to know that. Okay. So that's the beginning, and then we're going to go up to the top, your highest note on the 5 finger. And we're going to be working with that note and the next note down. And then again, the point of the triangle earlier, your F sharp, all right? So if you can kind of just get your hand used to those 3 keys, this doesn't feel as comfortable for most people as our little triangle. These are your commonly used fingers, so they'll feel a little bit easier to control with those 3 notes, and the triangle shape is much easier to see and work with. This shape's a little different, and these are fingers that you might not expect to be playing in tandem with each other, but that's going to happen. So the very beginning of the song is going to be using the triangle, and the next part is going to be using this little curve at the end. All right, so you can notice we're skipping over the middle finger here. 5, 4, 2. All right, so just get your right hand to the point where you can play through that little melody. The triangle. and the curve coming down. All right, so that's part one. It's just the right hand learning those two shapes, the triangle and the curve. And if you can just get those into your hand and play through them a little bit. I'm not really concerned with the rhythm. The rhythm will come later. The left hand is just going to be playing I'm going to call it two chords. The chords are actually two notes each, and it's in the same position. So if you look at where your right hand is, across those 5 notes, E is your lowest note. In the left hand, E is also your lowest note, except it's under your 5th finger, just because of the way our hands work. They're mirror images of each other. So where my right hand thumb is on E, your left hand pinky 5 finger is going to be on the E. In the left hand, though, you're going to play the bottom note, your 5 finger, and the top note, your 1 finger. And if you can just get used to playing that together as a chord, I'm just dropping my wrist into those 2 notes and holding them. And then you're going to be switching this thumb up to the next key. So your thumb naturally just opens away from the other fingers of your hand, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep all the fingers in position except my thumb and just move it up to the next key. And then again, I'm playing the bottom and the top note together. So you can just practice the left hand moving from here to here. From here to there. Da 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 da. You can kind of do like I'm doing and just sing the melody. Bum ba 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 ba. You can kind of hear when that next left hand comes in. To put that together with your melody in your right hand, the first note, your E, goes together with your E chord. Rather than trying to play through the melody, what I'm going to do is get you used to how the notes fit together, what the puzzle pieces are. To start with, let's just look at this position, kind of like what we're doing with the chord here in the left hand. You could play a chord in your right hand and get your hands used to hitting those 2 together. All right. Now, switch that left hand note. Your thumb goes up. And that's going to go with the curve part of your melody. You could just play that curve almost like a chord and play all 3 notes. Or if you would rather, you could just do this A and then go down to the black key. Right? That's what's going to happen together is the A, and then it's followed by this F sharp by itself. All right, so it starts together on the E with your left hand chord. And then we have the rest of our triangle that's going to happen right after that with nothing else in the left hand. The left hand's just going to stay there on that chord while you complete the triangle. All right, now we're going to go up to the top note. And again, I haven't done anything on my left hand different, but you notice the similarity now. We have both the bottom and the top note covered in both hands when you get up to that top note here, and you're going to step down to the very next finger, and that's where the change happens in the left hand. And then 1 more note at the end, the black key. All right, so once again, the triangle, up to the top, and when you come down, left hand switches. There's a little intro note that we're going to add here. So before you actually start together on the E with the E chord, this note at the top of your chord, the B, is actually like a little introducing note. So you're going to play that first by itself. And so then rather than playing both notes at the same time, what you might want to practice is playing your thumb and then keeping that note down while you add the E at the bottom so that both notes are pressed down at the same time, but they're not actually happening simultaneously. You start with the thumb and you add the bottom note. And the reason why you want to practice doing that is because then when you add that bottom note, the E, you're also going to be playing the first note in your right hand. So you're actually adding the E on both sides of this B. There's one up here and there's one below. The introducing note is your thumb in the left hand, and then you're going to add the E's together. And from there, we go onto the triangle, up to the top, and then together on the next note. And then there's just one more note on the black key. I'm going to do that again. Our introducing note in the left hand, E's on both sides, and then we're going to go through the triangle, up to the top, together on the next note, down to the sharp. All right, so you can just go through that little piece until it becomes comfortable. And just repeat it. So the next piece is going to be the ending. What happens is it repeats. All right, so we have our triangle again, but the triangle changes. Instead of coming down to the E here, we're going to go to this black key. And when we do that, the left hand is also going to come down to this nearest black key. This is A sharp or B flat. This is E flat or D sharp. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to skip ahead to that for a second. And what we want to do is get used to playing that black key. Another way to think of this is that it's part of the group of two blacks, right? So it's the top of the two blacks. And then the note you're playing in your left hand is the top note of the three black group, right? So you have a group of three, group of two. We're playing the top note in both of those groups. All right, so that's being played in your left hand. Instead of playing this E and B as a chord, you could play this B flat with your two finger. So I'm just going to the next finger there. Or I could move my thumb down. Now to do that, because my thumb is shorter than the other fingers, I would need to slide forward so that my thumb can reach that note. And that might feel a little awkward because all your other fingers are kind of in between the black keys. So it might be easier just to use your two finger there. When I do that, it's a kind of a weird sound all by itself, and that's just because you don't have the context of the rest of the, the other parts of the song. But trust me, that's the right notes. Remember, this is a weird song. It's a magical, mysterious sound, right? So we've got some interesting stuff going on. When you hit that black key in the left hand, the right hand is going to play the E flat, or also known as D sharp. All right, so practice just hitting those together. And then the E is the bottom note in your left hand. All right, it's going to sound even weirder when you just hear those together. But what we want to do now is we want to move the right hand first is going to go up to the F. So earlier we had this triangle with F as our sharp. Now that we have a different black key, we're going to be moving to the F, what we call the F natural, which is the white key F rather than F sharp, right? So instead of the triangle, we have kind of like a new point to a different triangle, although we're not going to be playing any of the notes down here, right? So the D sharp is our point, and we're going to be moving up to the side of this triangle. You kind of just think of it as a diagonal line to the F from here to here. All right, so I've got my thumb on that note, and that's together with my chord in my left hand. And I'm just going to go up to the F with my finger number 2. All right, so just practice doing that a couple times together, and then right. And the last thing that's going to happen is your left hand is going to switch back to its original chord. All right, now what I want you to practice doing, though, is actually letting go of that F as you play the chord in the left hand. So we kind of want to move from the right hand note to our left hand chord, and it's like a teeter-totter. The hands switch from each other, right? So we're together on the black keys. The right hand leans to the right up here, and then as your left hand plays the chord, the right hand lets go. And you're going to just practice that. Together, right, left. Together, right, left. What takes a little doing is realizing I also need to replay that E. So I have to lift my hand and play both notes. All right. Now that's not the end. There's actually 2 more notes after you do this. There's like a little echo. All right. So we just did this together, right, left. And now what the left hand is going to do is you're going to play the middle note of your chord. All and then come back to your thumb. All right, now I'm holding down all the notes as I do that. You don't have to do that necessarily. You could just let go of it as you go to your middle finger on the G and then come back to your thumb. All right, so you don't need to hold any of those notes. You can just go right to them. All right, so again, that's the ending. So what we want to do now is add our little incomplete triangle. We did the full triangle earlier, right, where we came all the way back around to our E. This time we're not going to play the E, we're going to go to that D sharp. So, and here's our chord with it. Right, left, and our echo. Okay, so we're going to work on that just a little bit, doing our triangle. Now, by the way, the triangle is still together with the left hand like we did at the beginning. And then moving into the black keys. Notice I'm pushing in or forward as I do that. And then right, left, echo. All right, now I'm going to do this from the beginning just so you can kind of see how it all connects. The left hand starts with its introducing note, the thumb on B. And then we're going to add the E's on both sides. Come around our triangle points all the way to the top. Stepping down as your left-hand thumb comes up, down to the F sharp. And from here, we go right back to the E with my thumb, and I'm going to play my chord again. Come around the triangle, this time to the D sharp with my left hand going to the A sharp. Together, right, left, and then my echo. Okay, so you can step through that and just try playing through the whole thing as you feel able. And once you're comfortable with that, you're ready to move on to part 2.